I'm Gary C. Johnson. You've seen these billboards and ads that say size matters. I agree. The size that matters is the size of the results the law firm gets for their clients. We have several multi-million-dollar verdicts here in Kentucky. In fact, our firm owns the record for the single largest personal injury verdict in the state of Kentucky. That's the size that matters to you. In Kentucky, give our firm the call.
If you're hurt, injured, don't waste time. Gary Johnson tries for every dime.
Welcome to Simply the Law of Life, a program created by attorney Gary C. Johnson. Simply the Law of Life provides free legal advice and encourages happiness and quality of life. Now, here's Simply the Law of Life with Gary C. Johnson and Keith Casebolt.
Hello, everyone. Welcome into the show, Simply the Law of Life. I'm Keith Casebolt, my dear friend, Gary C. Johnson.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Hi, guys and gals. How you all doing, huh? Doing great, right? Been a wonderful week that we've all survived, even though they've tried to pretend there's a gas shortage. Wonder what they were trying to figure out how to do, raise the prices or something? Who knows? Or make it all electric cars,
You know,
make it acceptable.
I thought about you when this happened because you talked to me about emotions and how people always react to emotions. And it got pretty scary the other day, didn't it? I mean, all of a sudden, people are quarreling and fighting, and they're got the highway blocked, and they're trying to get in and get gas, and lo and behold, it got fixed.
As always.
Yeah.
How you guys been doing on that inner voice there? Huh? Been dealing with it pretty good? Got a book for you. Naturally, Keith dropped it off at my office. So I decided I'd better read some of it. Haven't read the entire thing, but I've read some of it. Can't Stop Thinking by Nancy Collier. It's very similar in one sense to this book, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, T-O-L-L-E, because they're saying both. I've started to pretty well figure out that there's a couple of different lines of thought about how you deal with the inner voice, or maybe more than that.
Yeah, we're learning as we go.
Yeah, we're learning as we go. One is you change the negative thought that you have with a positive one, or change it with a feeling of gratitude for something. These folks discount that as a way to deal with it. Then you've got The Chatter by Cross, that book that we've talked about before, where he says, just give it a name when it starts talking and reason with it and say, hey, that's not true, that's not really who we are, but keep it separate with its own name, and that way that voice is separated from you at a distance. These two folks, it appears, say you got to become an observer of that voice that's in your head and accept the fact it's there, accept the fact you can't control it, but distance yourself from it when it's doing negative things or things that are going to make you feel bad. Just observe it. In other words, they say, be just like you're filming it with a camera.
Yeah.
You're watching it from a distance and you're filming it with a camera, and have a distance understanding that you're going to have thoughts. We all have thoughts, right? What? One of you didn't have thoughts? Don't believe it. We all have thoughts. The question these two folks talk about in terms of, those are your thoughts. That doesn't mean that's you. Yet we think and we adopt the fact we're our thoughts, but our thoughts are coming from any myriad of places, emotions and everything else, and our thoughts are sometimes outright crazy, which is not us, right? So they're talking in terms of, and this one was a pretty good thing in it. I'm going to read some about from it in a minute. Even though I've not read the whole book, I didn't get it in time to read the whole book. Let me tell you what I did. I started reading it, okay? And then I started putting stickies. And I put stickies in just about every page of something that I thought would be okay to read. And then I said, nah, let me go back to my old way. Just let it be where it is to see what I come up with, because I think that in the end, that's what my friends will want to read. And it's pretty profound, one of the stickies that I ended up putting on there just by picking it up at random and letting it hit where it may. And I'm going to read that to you because I think one of the folks that watches this show may need to hear what that is on that sticky, and I think that's why you turned to it, okay? Gotta find my sticky now.
And I will say this while you're looking that up. When you first told me over the telephone, you and I were having a conversation, and you said about this disconnect, about disconnecting from the voice, and you even told me, Keith, pretend like you're in a room with people, and you're actually listening to a conversation, and this other person that's not you would be saying these things that you're hearing in your head. What would you think about it? And I thought, that is an amazing analogy, because I would obviously say some of those things are just absolutely wrong.
You have to understand, Keith and I, we're floundering around here trying to find an answer to this, okay? And hopefully we're giving you the information that we're getting so that maybe you can find an answer and tell us.
Yeah.
Because it's a reality that we all have to deal with, is those negative and those thoughts in our brain. We have to deal with those. And the question is, are they going to be thoughts that lead us or let us become happy, or are they thoughts that are going to consume us and make us miserable? That's the issue. And it's real. It's the old chatterbox. I've talked about it for years. The chatterbox, and that fact that when it comes to contentment and feeling good about ourselves, we are truly our own worst enemy. We are the first person to point out our faults. We even find fault when they might not be in here, and probably not. We never say to ourselves, oh yes, you're wonderful, you're fine. You can do anything you set your mind to. You have a talent. You are unique. Do you ever say that to yourselves? Do you ever have a thought that says that about you? If you do, hallelujah.
We do just the opposite. And you know, I didn't even notice it until you pointed it out to me. You said, do you know you have a habit of putting yourself down? And I said, really? You said, yeah, whatever it comes to, you have a habit of putting yourself down. And I thought, why do I do that? Why do we do that? Why would we ever want to say negative things about ourselves?
And I have got him now to where he will not say anything negative about himself, even in jest, I hope.
Yeah, and I kept telling you, I said, well, Gary, I'm just joking. I'm just making fun. And you're saying, no, you're not. You're actually saying those things, and you're saying them out loud. And I didn't realize I was even doing it.
Well, let's take a vote. How many of you think that Keith is pretty doggone smart, huh?
See, I just...
How many? Okay, but that's okay.
See, he raised his hand and I didn't. So...
See?
I just did it again.
Yeah, see? Talented, really good at what he does, presentable, excellent at putting advertising together. But the one person that probably doesn't know that is Keith.
Yeah. Yeah.
When we all see it, right? I couldn't do this show without him. I couldn't even hope to do this show without Keith.
It took me so long for you to say, Keith, I've found the person that's holding you back. And I said, please tell me who it is. I thought you were going to reveal this big secret. And then you looked at me and he said, it's you. You're the one that's holding yourself back. You're the one that is putting yourself down. You are your worst enemy. And my friend, you were right.
If that voice can do this to Keith, you are not immune from it. It can do it to you too, and probably is. Don't watch it from a distance. Distance yourself from it understand that voice is thoughts. That's all it is. It's just your thoughts. It's not you. And don't adopt it as being you. I agree with these two folks here. You need to become a witness to what that voice is saying, and maybe life along with it, or life at it, or whatever. But become a witness to it.
Gary, let me ask you a quick question before you go to the book. Why is it that any of us, all of our friends watching, we can pick people up, we can lift them up, we can tell them about all the great attributes they have, all the great talent they have. We get upset when we see other people put themselves down or belittle themselves, but we can't do it for ourselves. Why is that?
Because of that thoughts in our mind, the thing that you and I are working with, trying to deal with.
Yes.
The thing, and we're getting there, Keith.
We're making progress. I met a wonderful lady the other night at a band concert who told me that she and all of her friends love discussing the information that you're giving. She said, it's amazing. Some people agree with this and some agree with something else. She said, but we're all discussing it and we're all talking about it.
Remember years ago we said on this program, if we can get our friends that's watching it to start thinking, we've done an amazing thing. And that's all I want you to do. I don't necessarily have the right answers. I don't necessarily pretend to have the right answers. I'm floundering just like you are to try to figure out how we as human beings can understand our own worth, can understand the value we have to society, to our people around us, and to deal with those thoughts that we have that try to prevent us and lie to us from being what we could be. That's what I'm dealing with. Now I'll read to you look a little bit from this book that Keith dropped off, Can't Stop Thinking, okay? The first thing I want to read to you is about, she says, awareness is observing. I discuss awareness a lot in this book, and indeed, awareness is the key to breaking free from addictive thinking. But awareness is a word we throw around to mean many things. It's also something we don't think of as a skill, but instead as something we just possess or are born with. To some degree, that's true, but in the context of this conversation, awareness is something very specific and a skill we must develop and cultivate. Awareness, as I refer to it, is the practice of creating an inner witness who can see thoughts without being identified, merged, or collapsed into them. Before you can make any choices about how you want to relate and respond to thoughts, you must develop an I, or a witness, who's separate from thought. You need to step back, as we can't change our relationship with something until we can see it as a something we're in relationships with. As Eckhart Tolle explains, once we see our thoughts, we're no longer addicted to them. Now, she talks about addiction to thoughts in here. And I want to read to you what she says a little bit about it, how we become literally addicted to our thoughts.
You've got to become aware, first of all, what the voice is saying to you, the words that it's saying, the harm that it's doing, and the fact that you do have a situation.
She says that we become addicted to our thoughts and we merge with them and literally are prisoner to our thoughts. Now, so she's developed a test under where she said, see if you answer 5 or 6 of these in the yes. If you do, then you may very well be addicted to your thoughts. And here's what she says. Does thinking sometimes negatively impact my overall well-being?
Absolutely.
Has thinking created problems in my relationships?
Of course.
Have work or home responsibilities been neglected because of thinking? When I notice that I haven't been thinking, do I experience fear or anxiety or a sudden excess of thinking? Do I find myself thinking more and spending longer stretches of time thinking? Have I tried to cut back on my thinking and not been able to make it happen? Do I spend a lot of time thinking? Has my thinking led to a physical or psychological health problems, anxiety, or depression? Have I cut down on or stopped doing activities I once enjoyed in order to spend more time thinking? Do I ever look forward to or crave thinking? She said if you answered 6 or 7 of those in the phone, that you may very well be addicted to your thinking.
You know, that makes me think about the time, Gary, you and I were doing the radio program, and we were talking about the inner voice and negative thoughts. And boy, it was such a good program that we had that day, and I felt so good. And I had to get in the car to take about a 2-hour trip after we did the show. And as soon as I got in the car, I heard that voice say, "Finally, we're alone." Now we can have this conversation. And here come all those negative thoughts. But when you're reading that chapter, I'm thinking about people that have said, I can't get this off my mind. I can't get over this. I can't let this certain subject go. That's addictive thinking about a negative situation, isn't it?
There's another thing she said about our thoughts. We don't just trust and believe our thoughts. Truth be told, we are utterly fascinated with thoughts. We find our own thoughts fascinating, delightful, visionary, and brilliant, and are utterly enamored with the content of our mind. Our thoughts are what make us special. The better the thoughts, the better we are as the one who thought them up. The questions our thoughts raise are of the utmost importance and value to us and must be answered because we have fallen in love with our thoughts. When I asked a self-identified thinking addict what she thought it would be like to experience more gaps between her thoughts and spend less time thinking, she said it would be like asking her to break up with a great lover. Indeed, many of us experience a kind of love affair with thoughts, attending to and valuing them above everything else in our life. Breaking free from our addiction to thinking would mean breaking up with our greatest love, demoting our thoughts from our most favorite things to something not so special, not so interesting, and possibly not even worthy of a lot of our attention.
Okay, so let me ask you, does this relate to today where people say they're addicted to social media? Mm-hmm. They're addicted to Facebook and they can't get off of it. So you're saying that we can be the same way, addicted to our own thoughts in our head, to the fact that we don't want to get away from it?
I'm just about convinced that you can become addicted to just about anything if you do it over and over and over in a repetitive thing. So think about that, folks. If you become addicted to something that's bizarre, you may very well have. I think truly we probably are addicted to our thoughts.
You said something on the radio program the other day that was really a revelation to me, that you said, Keith, I think one of the reasons I've been able to keep a lot of negative thoughts out of my head is that I give my mind assignments. I give it jobs to work on, and I keep it so busy that it's constantly working on cases and trying to solve problems, and it doesn't have time to do the other stuff.
That's exactly what I do, and I've done it for years. I literally assign my brain a task, and I say to myself, this is what I'm going to be. This is where my thoughts are going to be. And my thoughts are going to be to solving this problem, or that problem, or working this out, or planning what I need to get done. And it's worked very well for me, actually. I've probably pretty well wiped out the negative thoughts in my brain. But it's not been easy. And I found that it helps also, really, to witness my thoughts, like they're saying here. And if it's not a thought that I want, I just ignore it.
So, Gary, to all of us, whenever we're busy planning a vacation, planning a trip, or if we're doing a project or building, and we've got our brain busy with whatever it is that we're wanting to do, all the focus is there and no negativity comes in because the brain is occupied with the assignment you gave it.
You can't stop your brain from thinking, and you can't stop thoughts. That is absolutely impossible. If the thoughts are going somewhere where you, not being the thoughts, don't want it to go, just witness it and watch it. The thoughts, as though you're just observing them. and don't buy into those thoughts, because you can't stop those thoughts. There's nobody smart enough to stop. But after a while, it becomes a lot easier to identify the negative and the bad thoughts and just witness them and say, okay, so what? And move on.
So you decide not to travel down that road.
You're not going to go down that. You're not going to make it you.
Yeah. I can see that and understand it.
In fact, she's got a little section on this, taking ownership of thoughts. I'm going to read it to you.
Okay.
It's odd, really, that we refer to the words we hear in our heads as our thoughts, as if something we come up with, make happen, and script. And yet the words we hear, the substance of which we're taking credit for or blame for, appear entirely without our consent, right? Do you consent to your thoughts? No. Okay? And without our crafting them. Think about it. Would you really choose most of the thoughts that appear in your consciousness? Of course you wouldn't. Thoughts appear whether we choose them or not, and whether we sanction their appearance. So in what way are they ours? Yes, we are the only ones hearing the thoughts, but we certainly were not the ones that scripted them, agreed to them, or invited them into our consciousness. Our thoughts are not ours at all, not something we have chosen to create. Rather, they are random bits of content containing characters, emotions, and situations pulled from our life experiences, popping out from a soup of our own experiences, usually for no particular reason.
So in today's society, when we hear someone that's blurted out a thought, and maybe that blurt turned out to be offensive, and the individual comes back and apologizes, Gary, they always say, that's not me. That's not who I am.
That's true.
You're saying
That was their thought.
they're telling the truth. It was just a random negative thought that popped into their head and they vocalized it, but that's not really who the human being or the person is.
Okay, now I got to read this, because to me this is the thing that I think one of my friends needs to hear. Okay?
All right.
It's ignoring the deeper causes of the thoughts. In psychology, there's an expression: if it's hysterical, it's historical. If a situation is making you feel particularly emotional or out of control, it's probably related to something you lived at another time when you were younger and probably with your early caretakers. The same can be said for our thoughts. If it feels like you're stuck like glue to a set of thoughts, it's probably about something more than just what you're ruminating on, more than what it looks like on the surface. You're stuck because you're trying to figure out or fix an experience from an earlier time. Let's say you ended up with PTSD or something like that. That's what they're talking about, things like that. To resolve feelings that were never resolved or will never be resolved. You're in a relationship with an old wound and a young self, which have been triggered by this current situation in which this thought loop is trying to work out. Once you understand this and stop buying into the storyline that thoughts are spinning, and once you realize that your feelings are not just and not really about what your thoughts are telling you they're about, you can then loosen your grip on the situation at hand and ease up on an urgently having to solve it. In so doing, you're not only freeing yourself from a particular thought you're locked up in, but you're also breaking the addictive thinking pattern that keeps you mentally hooked into every new problem that arises.
You know, that sounds logical, but it doesn't sound easy. I'm sure, just like me, that we have friends saying, but Gary, how do I take an eraser and race the chalkboard and get rid of all those past thoughts I've had that I've been holding on to? That is not an easy thing to do.
You don't. You surrender to them and accept them and look at them and witness them. Right here, I got it. It's exactly, if I can.
So in other words,
got
you do what you started at the beginning of the show. You disconnect and you say, if I had a best friend and they were having this problem, what would I tell them? I would tell them to move on. I would tell them to let it go. I would tell them that they have a great life to live. I'd give all the right answers. And if I would give those answers to them, then the question is, why wouldn't I give it to myself?
Yeah, and he talks about it and told us about how that you just become part of that moment. If there is truly nothing that you can do to change your here and now, and you can't remove yourself from the situation, then accept your here and now totally by dropping all inner resistance. The false, unhappy self that loves feeling miserable, resentful, or sorry for itself can then no longer survive. This is called surrender. Surrender is not weakness. There is great strength in it. Only a surrendered person has spiritual power. Through surrender, you will be free internally of the situation. You may then find that the situation changes without any effort on your part. In any case, you are now free.
So basically, when I hear you read that, I'm thinking about when I've heard people say, hey, it's the cards I was dealt, I'm going to play the hand to the best of my ability. You're not arguing about the cards anymore. You're just going to go ahead and play the hand.
That's right. I'm going to read you this little section he said to a paragraph. See if you can catch yourself complaining in either speech or thought about a situation you find yourself in. What other people do or say, your surroundings, your life situation, even the weather. To complain is always non-acceptance of what is. It invariably carries an unconscious negative charge. When you complain, you make yourself into a victim. When you speak out, you are in your power. So change your situation by taking action or by speaking out if necessary, or possibly leave the situation or accept it. All else is pure madness.
Wow. Well, that's going to give us something to think about and discuss and talk this week for sure. Thank you, my friend. Another great lesson. And I hope that
this stuff's complicated now, folks. You have to understand. Maybe someday some of us will figure it out, huh? Okay.
Well, I hope the one individual that needed it on this program got some things to think about that will help them and help them with the happiness. If you would like to get in touch with Gary, you can do that, Gary@GaryCJohnson.com. We'd like to hear your thoughts about the program and maybe your advice. As Gary said, he and I both could use it. On behalf of Gary C. Johnson, I'm Keith Casebolt. Thank you so much for watching Simply the Law of Life. Gary and I look forward to seeing you again at this very same time.
Thank you for watching Simply the Law of Life, a program created by attorney Gary C. Johnson. Until next week, may you be safe, blessed, and happy.
I'm Gary C. Johnson. You've seen these billboards and ads that say size matters. I agree. The size that matters is the size of the results the law firm gets for their clients. We have several multi-million-dollar verdicts here in Kentucky. In fact, our firm owns the record for the single largest personal injury verdict in the state of Kentucky. That's the size that matters to you. In Kentucky, give our firm the call.